This is part 2 of the Carmen Coat sewing tutorial, where I explain how to sew the welt pockets. This is one of the steps that takes the longest. If you have little experience with welt pockets, please make a couple of test pockets with some leftover wool. Fold the pocket lengthwise with the right sides together. Stitch the short sides. Trim the seam allowance, especially at the points. Be careful not to cut through the stitches. Turn your pocket right side out and press. I use my seam ripper to push out the points. You can use anything pointy, but not sharp for this. Repeat this for the other pocket as well. After pressing your welt pockets, it's time to top stitch them. Start stitching at the raw edge 1 cm away from the edge. Stop 1 cm from the corner, pivot and stitch close to the point, then pivot again and stitch back to the previous point, then towards the other side of the pocket and repeat. And this is what that looks like. You can see that I started at the raw edge, stopped stitching 1 cm from the point, then stitch towards the point, stitch back, and then I went all the way over to the other side and repeated the same process. Repeat this for the other pocket as well. Next, baste the raw edge at exactly 1 cm. Be precise. Next, get your front panel. This is the left front panel. And when I say left, I mean when wearing the coat. Remember this because that's what I mean when I refer to left and right in this tutorial. I always redraw the box to make sure it's still perfect. This would not be necessary if you marked with thread. I kind of prefer marking with chalk, but I really couldn't say why. The marked lines need to be 1 cm away from each other each. You need to mark 2 triangles at the top and the bottom of the box. You can use the triangles from the pattern. I'm drawing them on myself here. This right here is the side seam. With the raw edge of your pocket piece facing the side seam, you need to lay the basted line over the marked line that's closest to the center front. Here I am pinning the pocket piece to the front panel, but I don't recommend doing this. I would definitely recommend hand basting the pocket to this line. That way it's much easier to keep it in place while you're sewing at your machine because things can move around a lot. You can see how accurate I'm being here though, so I'm keeping this clip in this video. It's important to have that basted line just exactly over that line closest to the center front. So make sure you take your time here. Sew over the basted line with a regular stitch length and be careful not to stitch past your welt pocket at either end. So you see me putting down my needle just on the pocket, not on the front panel. Here is the pocket attached to the left front panel. This is the side seam. Check if the marked line is still 1 cm away from the raw edge, and if necessary, mark that line again. You attach the pocket lining at this line, which is the same line as the one on the box on the front panel. So that's the line closest to the center front. Hand baste the pocket lining to that line and then sew. Again, be careful you don't stitch past the welt. Next, take your other pocket lining piece and baste the line that's closest to the center front to the line on the front panel box that's closest to the side seam. Press the lining away from the stitched line after you've sewn the other pocket back on. You can see that the pocket on the side seam side has less fabric next to the stitch line than a pocket on the center front side, and that's supposed to be that way. Next, you're going to cut the line in the middle of the box. Cut up to the triangles and not through them, and then cut the triangles diagonally towards the edge of the box, which is where you stopped stitching. On the other side of my box, I noticed that my welt actually extended a little bit further than the box that I drew on. It can happen because you're sewing with quite thick fabric. It sometimes happens that it moves around a little bit. It's not an issue. You just need to cut up to the stitches, so where you stop stitching basically, and not through them, of course, if this happens to you as well. And then you'll just have a triangle that's just a little bit further down or up, and that's fine. Take the lining over to the wrong side. Make sure the welt is flipped towards the side seam. I grab it with my hand and flip the front panel over. You can see the welt through the box. The lining needs to be aligned neatly along the triangles. There's a small pucker here, which means it needs a little bit more space. So I flip the front panel back over again and give that side of the lining a little bit more room by making a tiny little snip in the corner there. Just as a reminder, this is the center front and this is the side seam. I press the lining away from the stitch line, the triangles get pressed away from the box. Take the pocket on the side of the side seam and flip it over the other one. I press the excess lining fabric toward the center front again to be sure. Get your hand sewing needle and your contrasting thread. Take one of the triangles, hold it, and flip the fabric of the front panel under. You're going to baste the pocket lining to the triangles. Take your time with this. Make sure to get both pieces of the pocket lining when you take your needle through at the corner. Take the needle through to the other side and tie off the thread. Just continue basting until you reach the other side of the triangle. When you reach the other side, tie off the thread. This is what the triangle looks like from both sides. All of the layers of the lining are attached to the triangle, and the triangle is basted from the exact corner where you stopped stitching to the other one. Then you just repeat the process for the other triangle. I just basted both of the triangles to the pocket lining pieces. Now I'm going to sew the pocket lining together. You start stitching at the beginning of the triangle, then when you've reached the end, make sure you catch both pocket lining pieces here and pivot your needle. Stitch to the edge of the pocket, 1 centimeter from the edge, then go all around. I stop stitching well before I reach the other triangle because I flip everything over and start stitching from the other triangle to make sure I'm as accurate as I can be. I don't take out the basting stitches at the triangles because of my lazy disposition, but you can do that if you like. Next, I flip the front panel over with the right side up. I pin the pocket lining to the front panel so I don't accidentally stitch the pocket back to the welt in this next step. I give everything a good press and then I go over the top stitching at the short sides of the welts to attach the welt to the front panel. Don't sew the opening. You do not know how many times I made this mistake. Just make sure that you stitch the short sides only. Lastly, you need to do a blind stitch at the pocket edges to avoid seeing your lining from the right side. This also functions as a little bit of extra reinforcement. You just take your matching thread and do a blind stitch, which means taking a little bit of fabric from the front panel and a little bit of fabric of the welt pocket piece, and then just go from one side to the other and then back again. And this is the finished product. You repeat this for the other front panel, of course.